comic books, cause I don't wanna look at nothing. This world's too much. I swallowed all I could.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trade Talk. I'm your host, Niko. This is episode 40, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy out there with everything going on in the world. And hopefully during this time, you've taken some much-needed time to just relax with whomever you're quarantining with, or if you're on your own, just kind of staying out of trouble and staying safe and healthy, and catching up on your reading and doing a lot of things like that, things that will keep you indoor, to keep you busy and not bored. And I know I've taken this opportunity to read a lot of stuff that's been in my to-read pile for some time. So that's, I hope everybody's been enjoying themselves as much as they can with everything happening. I know it sucks, but hopefully this doesn't, we're not all stuck inside too much longer. And, most importantly, though, stay safe and keep others safe. So first up today, I wanted to quickly mention, I'm not going to go into discussing this book that I've read. I read the first 24 issues of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic book series written by Boom. Published by Boom, written by Kyle Higgins. Art mainly by Hendry Pasetta, I think is how you pronounce his name, Hendry Pasetta. And there's a bunch of other artists, too, that kind of do fill-in issues here and there, but he did the majority of the art on this. I picked up these beautiful two big hardcovers, like these deluxe oversized edition hardcovers that Boom came out with. I guess they first started coming out a year or two ago in this edition. And I just heard a bunch of great things about the Kyle Higgins comic book run. I haven't followed Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in years. I was a fan when I was much younger, and I was like 7 years old. I watched the show, so I'm familiar with them enough in that sense. And I feel that if for anybody interested, definitely check this book out. If you have any idea who the Power Rangers are, I think it's very new reader friendly in the sense that you don't really need to know too much about them going into this, other than maybe the whole why the Green Ranger maybe joined the team. Although there's a lot of content in here, I'm told, that is not stuff that was in the actual TV series, because there's a lack thereof story in that first season. So there's a lot of interesting things that they kind of played off of those characters and concepts and what have you, and that to make very interesting stories in the comic book series. And I thought it was just really well done. And I don't read too many licensed kind of property comics, but I had heard such great things about this. I like Kyle Higgins as a writer, so I really, really ended up digging this. I actually just talked about Kyle Higgins in a book I didn't enjoy last episode. Now that I'm saying his name, I recall that, but I've enjoyed everything almost everything that he's written, that I've read. I've really enjoyed, and this is one of those things. So anyways, check out the show. We did a 3.5-hour deep dive discussion, me and the guys over at Death Store Prods. They have a page similar to Late Night Chat Network on SoundCloud, so just do a search. I'll also be reposting it when the episode is posted. I did a comic podcast with these guys, Deadman and my other buddy Birdie, who co-hosts along with me occasionally nowadays, as I'm not a regular on there anymore. We used to be for years, like 3-4 years, I did comics podcasts with Deadman and Birdie over at Death Store Prods. And so check out his page. He has a bunch of content, some really good stuff there. I'm featured on a lot of the stuff there. If you actually look on the Late Night Chat Network page on SoundCloud, there's actually a playlist that I need to update with all of my appearances on those shows, because I have a playlist there, and I will repost this episode when it comes out. It should be coming out a day or two probably after you hear this Trade Talk, if you are going to listen when it actually comes out. So take a look at the feed on the Late Night Chat Network page if you are at all interested in me doing a deep dive with these other guys talking about this series. They're big fans of the property. They were big fans of this series. So I pulled the trigger, finally picked up the first two oversized hardcovers, which are great-looking hardcovers. It collects the first 24 issues of the main series before the Shattered Grid kind of event crossover, which concludes the end of Kyle Higgins' run on this series. So I have yet to read that, but I heard that's where it kind of gets a little bit confusing for people that aren't familiar with all the other different teams and kind of history of the Power Rangers. It's almost like a Spider-Verse of sorts, if you're more in tune with the Marvel event, Spider-Man event, the Spider-Verse storyline that Dan Slott did. It's something like that with like parallel, I guess, dimensions and stuff like that. Hence the shattered grid. I guess they're all coming together for whatever reason. So, yeah. So, check that out. It's a 3.5 hour conversation, like I said. So we did a deep dive, broke down every issue, our thoughts on the series as a whole, our thoughts on every issue, thoughts on the Power Rangers, our history with the characters. Really great stuff. I just did that the other day, recorded that the other day, and it'll be out soon. And check out Death Store Prods on SoundCloud, or as I mentioned, I'll be posting that episode on my feed on the Late Night Chat Network. If you're just interested in hear that episode, check that out, guys. But other than me enjoying it, I'm not going to get into it any further here. Just shout out to them and definitely check that out. Okay, I'm not going to try not to spend as much time on this because something happened with the first recording of this that went wrong and made me have to go back and re-record this right now. So I kind of already said my piece on this book. And then when I was done talking about this, I realized we had to go back because there was something wrong with the sound and re-record. So I talked about Gravel Volumes 2 and 3. This is, I guess, written in part somewhat by Warren Ellis. He's credited for story and script, so I guess he kind of just did some plotting. I don't know how much actual script he did. I think Mike Wolfer did most of the heavy lifting on these. Mike Wolfer also did pretty much majority of the art throughout these 2 volumes of Gravel, Volume 2 and 3, titled Volume 2 is The Major Seven, Volume 3, The Last King of England. Yeah, and which I enjoyed. I liked Mike Wolfer being the main artist on these 2 books. I think Jason Burrows, and Oscar Jimenez did a little bit of stuff in Volume 2, but for the most part, it was all Mike Wolfer. And I thought that was better than seeing the 2 to 3 different artists that they had in the first volume of Gravel, which I talked a couple of weeks ago about on this show as well. This is printed by Avatar Press. So again, I think with the main ongoing series of Gravel, Warren Ellis is not as involved, and I think it somewhat shows. I think that the cream of the crop is still the mini-series that Warren Ellis had written prior to the Gravel ongoing series that he was fully involved in. Strange Killings, Stranger Killings, something Strong Medicine. There's like 3 or 4 different mini-series with Gravel as a character in it. It's about Gravel, but it was prior to the ongoing series of Gravel. And those are still, I think, the best of the bunch. The first volume I talked about a couple weeks ago that I read, I enjoyed it enough. I thought it was good. But these subsequent volumes, these volumes 2 and 3, kind of failed to get any better. It kind of left me disappointed, to be quite honest. I'll tell you why. It just felt very unoriginal, and by the book, by the number, very the pacing. It was very obvious what was going to happen in each one. Very basic, boring, predictable fucking plots throughout each one. I mean, looking at the title of each of these volumes, that basically just sums up the story. It felt like a rehash of the same plot line through the first volume in these next 2 volumes. And being that I talked about it more at length in the last conversation a couple episodes ago of Volume 1, but essentially there was a group called the Minor Seven, which was comprised of some of the best people, that most powerful people that practice magic, and Gravel used to be part of the Minor Seven years ago. They had thought him to be killed, so they basically kicked him out, but they wanted him out anyways. They replaced him. Something happened. All of a sudden, he gets wrapped up in this mystery, and he finds out all these Minor Seven guys are chasing after this Sanskrit, this basically this old tome of magic spells that's powerful, and they didn't want it to fall into the wrong hands and have one of the Minor Seven, because they're all shitheads, meddling fucking people with too much power, as it already is, and he has a grudge against them, and so he basically gets involved in this thing where he ends up tracking. He doesn't want any of them to get the Sanskrit, so he ends up tracking down all of the actual major players in the minor 7 and killing them in the first volume. So each issue is him tracking down another one of them and strategically killing them off. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's a fine approach for a story. It was whatever. For the first volume, it was fine. Then the second volume, by the end of the first volume, you find out this guy who's been giving him phone calls throughout the first volume and kind of checking in on his progress and seeing how he's doing, maybe dropping him clues to help with this whole takedown of the minor 7. He finds out is the leader of the major 7. Now, the major 7, I guess, are even more powerful people that practice magic, like the next level, essentially, and the people that run everything behind the scenes. And you know what I mean? Like, they are the people that you would aspire to become if you're a magician, essentially. You want to be part of this team. So, there's an opening now on their team, and being impressed with what went down with the minor 7, as well as maybe nudging him in that direction, this leader of the major 7 basically gives the spot to Gravel. Then Gravel finds out that the spot is open because someone got killed in their team, and he's been now given the task of finding the murderer of this person that was on their team, who it was, how did it happen, how they went about it, blah, blah, blah. Because they're supposed to be untouchable in some sense, right? Like the mob. Anyway, so he's tasked with this. And then as it plays out, he ends up having to kill all of the major 7 down, essentially, to what basically he just went through with the minor 7, ends up happening with the major 7. Then he turns around and that's why the last volume is called the third volume is called The Last King of England. Whereas now he's the last man standing that practices magic. These powerful people, now the minor and major 7 are all basically killed. And now he has to go and create his own group of minor 7. So, and then one of these people that he ends up rejecting early in the vetting process vows revenge on him. And he ends up tracking down the 7 people that he ended up recruiting at some point in this book. He never actually completed the whole 7. And killing those people, and he does a shit job of protecting them, and it all ends with him having a pint in the bar, very John Constantine-like. Hence, that's what this character is kind of like, just with a little bit more experience in the sense he was a soldier and he can actually fight and all this kind of stuff. Unlike John Constantine, I find that's not the case. Yeah, so there you have it. That's basically the summarization of these 2 volumes. Like I said, very okay, predictable. It was fine if you're that huge of a character of this. I mean, I've read everything Gravel, except I think there's a volume 4, which Warren Ellis's name, I believe, is not even on it at all. I think it's just all Mike Wolfer, I believe. And yeah, I just feel like if Warren Ellis was involved at all in this, he gave him the barest bones of storyline, which he followed to the T. And this was what came out of it, and it's very boring and predictable and the same fucking type of story from different angles, rehashed and fucking represented to you, and it's just like whatever. I just was very blah to me, and by the end of it I was like, okay, it was fine. But like I said, I still think Cream of the Crop is the first 3 or 4 miniseries that Warren Ellis wrote. Weren't entitled Gravel. Gravel was the character in them, but those are definitely the best of the bunch, so definitely check those out. There's a very out-of-print collection, I think, that collects them all in black and white, which I wish I could find because that'd be great. But anyways, it's hard to come by. So yeah, Gravel. It was all right. Next up, we got Catwoman Volume 1 from DC Comics, written and drawn by Joelle Jones. And Fernando Blanco also drew an issue in this, as well as Laura Allred on colors. Fernando Blanco, who became, I think, the main artist after Joelle Jones was the regular artist on the book, I believe. Fernando took over. And then I guess Joelle draws an issue here and there once in a while as well. I believe the series is still going on. I don't know if she's still the writer. Apologies because I'm not following this in issues. I dropped off the book and ended up picking up this Volume 1 instead. But I'm a huge fan of Joelle Jones. Love her art. Love Lady Killer that she did through Dark Horse Comics prior to her, I guess, her doing... She did a few things for DC. She did Supergirl being super. I think those were like 3 or 4 oversized issues. That looked great as well. She did some stuff with Tom King over in Batman prior to the Catwoman ongoing series, and then after she did those Batman issues and the whole wedding thing went down, she went and wrote and drew this Catwoman series. Drew for the most part. And in this first volume, it's the first 6 issues of the series. I think she was the artist on about 5 of the issues. Fernando Blanco did the other issue, and may have also kind of split art duties on one of those 5 issues that she was the artist on. But I was glad that it's usually artists that are that are as popular as her don't usually turn out the pages as quick as you'd want them to. So coming off of Batman and coming and starting and doing this ongoing series as the writer as well, I didn't think she was going to be turning out that many issues. But this first volume is comprised of most of her work, so I was actually pretty happy about that. First off, I read the first 2 issues of this series and dropped it because it wasn't clicking for me as much as I would have wanted it to. Although I think collected in a trade like this was the way to read it, because the issues are fast-paced, not much dialogue, a lot of action sequences. The story moves at a fast clip. It just read better as a chunk than it did for me. The issues left me wanting more, so I'm glad I kind of revisited this just because of Joelle Jones being involved after I had dropped the series after a couple of issues. So I quite enjoyed this. And then Laura Allred on colors, great colorist, mostly works with Mike Allred, her husband. Majority of her work I've seen, at least that she's done there with him, and she complimented Joelle great on this as well. I like Joelle Jones because everyone looks very she's definitely, I guess, somewhat of a clean-lined artist, but then she gets very inky, like very messy at the same time. So she's got a good mix in her art style where everyone looks great looking, and that you could try to put her in that same camp of like cheesecakey, thin, clean-lined artist. But then she gets like real down and dirty with the inks that she puts down on the page a lot of the time. I mean, more so if you look at her stuff in Lady Killer, take a look at that stuff. That looks great. But yeah, so she's not afraid to get a little messy and detailed and put more lines down when necessary, I find, in her work. And that's what I like about her, because you get kind of both sides of it. But she's very good at drawing stylistic clothing. She's good-looking people. Like she's like, there's a scene in there where she's like dressed in like formal wear, like she's at like a gown, like she's at a ball of some sort for rich hoity-toity people. Catwoman, because she has to go out in the town and put on that show to get close to these rich people in order to rob them, like she normally does, this kind of stuff. And she's the perfect type of artist for that, like for those type of scenes. I think Joelle Jones just excels. She's great at that kind of stuff. And even like the time period stuff that she did in Lady Killer, but the fashion and the stylistic approaches to a lot of the time periods that she was trying to capture in her artwork. But Catwoman, she draws a great Catwoman. Like I said, great storytelling, great action sequences in this. I think she did a great job of some of the fighting scenes with Catwoman, and I was, while not like over the moon about her writing, I don't think she, I think she's still new to actually being the main writer on a series. This may be her first thing she's written. If she's written things before, I apologize, I'm just not as familiar with it. But artists collab with writers quite a bit, and they're storytellers in their own regard. So there's a lot of people that are slowly doing stuff. They're writing and drawing their own work, or they're moving on from just being primarily known as artists, and they try to write stuff, and it's not always as successful. Not everyone can write. I think she did a pretty good job in this. Basically, this is after the wedding. The wedding didn't happen. Catwoman, goes off on her own, being away from Batman, and she gets framed. She basically goes off, not with Batman. That kind of fell apart. She's out there, living her best life here, being Catwoman again, and but obviously pissed off, a little bit more aggressive probably than normal. Uh, she's letting it out on some people, letting it be known in this. She gets tangled up in some sort of thing involved with this like evil woman who somehow she's like peddling like some sort of a weird drug that people are using to like get some crazy strength, and she's like a skeletal woman, like she's got all this fake like shit that she puts on her face. I guess she's like really old, and she injects herself with this stuff to like keep her life going, essentially. Like she's almost like mummified. Like she takes off like all her fake like prosthetics like on her face at one point in this, and it's kind of disgusting looking. She like, it looks like the old woman who's like deteriorating in the bathroom and Shining, essentially. So she's very gross, and she does a good job of capturing that. And she gets involved in some sort of plot that she has happening, but meanwhile, her henchmen, she has a bunch of people that she's hired that are dressing up like Catwoman and causing shit around the city, and as a result, she's getting blamed for it. So she's kind of right in the middle of all that. And and then she's got like a cast of characters as always that she's kind of like rooming with, that she's kind of helping out, and then she always looks out for the small, little people, and the people that have harder upbringings and all that. It has all aspects of Catwoman, I think, that kind of ring true to her character and the type of person that she is, along with fantastic art from Joel Jones and Fernando Blanco, who did a great job on the issue he did as well. And like I said, I think that became the main artist after Joel Jones had stopped contributing as much art to the series as she did in this first volume moving forward. So I quite enjoyed it. I'm going to pick up the second volume. I'm glad I gave it a second chance after dropping it from reading it in single issues. I think reading it in a bigger chunk like this was quite good. And I'm looking forward to the next one. And then last off, we got Red Sonja Volume 2 and 3 from Dynamite Comics. I can't remember whether I talked about the first volume of this on the show or not. This is written by Gail Simone. This is her run on the character. This concludes her run on the character, which I think is the first 18 issues, and these two volumes were issues 7 through 18. Loved this. I thought this was great. I think Gail Simone, I've always heard, I haven't read too much by her. I know she's a fan favorite. People love her work. Definitely one of the more higher profile female creators as well. And I've read some things I've enjoyed by her. Primarily, I guess, the stuff that I've read of hers for Secret Six stuff that I've read. I've always heard good things about her Birds of Prey run. So there's things that like I've known about that she's written, but I've just never had the chance to read. I read some of her Wonder Woman, but this I ended up reading all three trades of this over the last little while. And I really, really, really enjoyed this. I thought this was really great. I've never really read Red Sonja. I've mostly read Conan, but Red Sonja is almost like a female Conan in the sense. And this is drawn by Walter Giovanni. That drew issues 7 to 12. And then in the second volume, also by Walter Giovanni. So Walter Giovanni was the artist on these volumes. The art was good for a Dynamite artist, especially because I don't feel Dynamite usually gets many great artists. Depending what it is, here and there they get some good people. I thought this artist was good because Red Sonja, being a good-looking woman, and Dynamite being the company that it has been in the past. Like, there's definitely some cheesecakey aspects of the characters that they choose to write and draw about. And Red Sonja being one of them, and because she's basically running around half naked. And I think that Walter Giovanni, while not kind of scaling it back completely, it's not all about TNA through all of the books with her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's he does it once in a while, but he doesn't take that opportunity every turn. Like, she's not always half naked. Like, she's wearing other things in that, so it's good. It's not that I have anything against either, but I think that It was a good balance, not to where the point where it's egregious or you're like, okay, well, come on now, like she shouldn't be naked in this scene, like. But he did a fine job, and the art was good. I thought it was. It's one of those things where some panels were kind of here and there. I was like, that's okay, but overall, I liked his art style, and I think it fit the book and the character very well. And there's a lot of funny moments throughout these that I think he really captured. So the storytelling was well done. So there and there's a lot of jokes about Red Sonja needing to bathe throughout this. So she's out there, she's getting dirty, she's adventuring. She's walking around for 4 or 5 days without means of having a bath. So, of course, during these periods of time, these warrior women, there may anybody for that matter, because bathing wasn't a regular thing. They might stink. So, Gail Simone, I thought, was pretty funny in this, because in the first volume, she continuously is just like, she's fed up. She's been on. After the first volume, a bunch of shit went down, and then leading into the second volume, she ends up being like thrown into like another journey, another adventure, and after a few days of like not eating properly, not sleeping, barely sleeping, getting shitted on it at every turn by one person or another, she kind of was like, okay, well, I'm dirty, I'm hungry, I'm going to have my way with somebody right now. So she tries to like force herself on like a couple of men throughout this second volume. And each time like is unsuccessful. And she's by no means a bad looking woman, but like a lot of the time it centers back to her smelling and them not being into it. So like at one point of this book, she finally gets to have a bath, and she's quite happy about it. And also she's bi. It seems like she will have her way with anyone, it seems like, in this, although she mostly lusts after men. There's women involved in like some sort of orgy sequences. I guess she doesn't mind them being around, and that she has and later in this, I think it's in the third volume. But yeah, the dialogue in this was top notch. I thought it was very funny that she was she's a very powerful woman, but still she makes light of the fact that there's certain things that people like, sexually, or like the way they approach certain aspects of women and or men, that she actually touched on in this, and she didn't shy away from, and it was quite funny. So I quite enjoyed it. I thought the book was funny at the best of times while still being an action adventure kind of pulpy romp. And in the second volume, she has to go meet like the best of all these type of people to bring back to this this lord. I don't know, like basically this guy's dying, and he's saying, hey, I'll free 100,000 or 1,000 slaves if you bring me back the best of all these people for my memorial, like basically his funeral. Like they're gonna put him in a tomb or whatever, he's dying, so they're going about it that way, like there's no way he's gonna survive. So they're like, okay, let's have a big celebration before I die, and if you do this for me, I'll free 1,000 slaves. So because Red Sonja is about the people, she went out and rounds up all these different people, like the best cook, the best like basically like, I don't know, like sex worker, prostitute, kind of like, she's like, I guess like one of these women is like almost like she puts on a show like belly dancer and all this kind of stuff, but then I think she basically sleeps with them. So she's the entertainment in that sense, and she gets the best cook, the best I guess like a jester of sorts kind of guy, and so she gets like 5 or 6 people that are well regarded across the land and brings them back and in her travel she becomes friends with all these people. Like they become very close, and like they all share a moment, and it just what's nice about this is that she kind of boils it, although she's a fierce warrior, you see like the humanity in her and her as a person, as opposed to her just being like fucking again, like a lot of the time, like Conan is, I think, or like comes off, or like what you would expect of somebody of these type of sword wielding fucking badasses from back then, like barbarians essentially, right, with more muscles than brains, right? So I think so I like that. I think she came off like a person you would want to know in real life. So she kind of puts up a brave front a lot of the time, but then she lets it down when it comes to her friends and family and people, right? So it's good values, and I just really enjoyed that. I think I really liked her take on this character, and now it's like I've heard this is the best of the bunch. I don't even know if it's worth pursuing other Red Sonja comics. So if you guys who are listeners know of any, please let me know. I just really quite enjoyed this. And then in the third volume, it kind of goes on after that whole first arc with like that last arc I said, where she was trying to gather everybody for this, and then the guy tries to kind of go back on their deal of freeing the slaves. I'm sure as you could tell, that ended badly for him. And then in the third volume, somebody puts a curse on her, and then it kind of plays out from there. She has to deal with this curse that this person ended up putting on her, and you have to see how she gets out of it. And stays true to herself and wins the day once again. So I just really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was great, and I can't say enough good things about it. There's actually an oversized deluxe hardcover that Dynamite came out with that also collects the whole run. So I got these trade paperbacks on the cheap. I don't know if I'm going to double dip and get the hardcover. While I like the art, I'm just like, I think I'm okay with these trade paperbacks for this one, believe it or not, unless I can get a deal on the hardcover. But the hardcover, I'm sure that's really nice too. If you're looking to pick up the whole thing in one place instead of just picking up all the paperbacks, that came out this past year, oversized deluxe hardcover of Gail Simone's run on Red Sonja, which should be the full 18 issues. All right, so that'll do it for today, guys. I'll see you guys next time, and thanks for tuning in as always.